What do you make of this one?
I think it's a massive own goal for Labour, because Keir Starmer, when he was Director of Public Prosecutions in 2012, sat on the committee that decided the sentencing guidelines for sex crimes of this sort, that said that there should be no automatic prison sentence. So it's a very easy open goal for the Tories to turn around and say, well, first of all, this is a crass and stupid Americanised idea of a personalised political campaign, because Rishi Sunak wasn't even an MP for half of the time that the Labour Party have taken the figures for this. And secondarily, it's your leader who decided, when he was in a position of serious political and legal power in this country, that this should be the case. And as for gun crimes, which party was it that last really looked at gun sentencing crimes in this country? It was the Labour Party after Dunblane. And, you know, we had the Dunblane massacre in 1996. The Tories set it in train, and then the Labour Party had a real tightening up of all the rules around guns, around handgun usage, around rifle usage, around shotgun usage, and around the possession of ammunition. So if the Labour Party thinks that there is something wrong with the sentencing, it has only to look to its own previous administrations to find out why.
Yeah, but Lucy Powell was saying yesterday, you know, this is about how we are funding the judiciary, how we're funding the police force. It's the whole crime and punishment area, the political side of that area, which is failing now, and therefore it is the government's fault.
I think there's an aspect to that, but she isn't, or that rather the Labour Party is not making that point in these poster campaigns. The Labour Party is trying to blame the Prime Minister personally for things, most of which had nothing to do with him, because he was still a university student at the time. I think it's a rather silly way of going about bringing up a rather serious issue. And if the Labour Party wanted to have a conversation about sentencing, if they wanted to talk about the failure of policing in this country, they could do it in a way that I think was more effective and that had more likelihood of getting the Conservatives involved in a conversation which the country needs. And it's yet another instance of Labour failing in their duty as an opposition because they're not actually getting the government to address problems.
But what is interesting with this one, it's what I'm slightly struggling to get my head around, is, you know, for those people who understand how politics works, the consensus was yesterday, well, at some point someone's going to apologise, it's going to be taken down from Twitter, bit of a cock-up. And yeah, what they've done is double down and released another one.
Well, I wonder if they're starting to think that maybe there is an appetite in the country because people are so fed up with the Conservatives as a party of government, rather than any particular policies, they've just had enough of them, that they can attack the Prime Minister personally. I think it's a misjudgment. I think, like you, I expect that there will be, if not a retraction, there'll be a taking down of the tweet, because what does it serve? I mean, you could see there that Lucy Powell was not enjoying being sent out onto the front lines to defend what is an overtly crass and silly campaign. The fact that Emily Thornberry has now waded into it to say that there's nothing wrong with it just proves yet again that Emily Thornberry is one of the most ridiculous politicians in this country, who's done more to bring down the standard of debate than anyone else I can think of on the Labour Party benches recently.
I mean, even Diane Abbott, who's a fairly big girl in the Labour Party, has come out and said this was a bad idea. We should not have done it.
When Diane Abbott decides that it's become too partisan and too personal, you know that you've made a real political mistake here. And I don't see what the Labour Party thinks it's going to gain, because if its own supporters agree with them, well, they've convinced no one, and you'd expect them to despise the Tories. And any sort of wavering voter looking at this will think, hang on, this isn't really getting to the heart of the issue. You're flinging mud at the Prime Minister.
But will they? Will they? Are they treating the British public as being a bit stupid and saying, if we put this out there, people will believe it?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what they're thinking. And my point is that the British public will look at that and go, well, no, it's nothing to do with Rishi Sunak, really, because the issues far predate him, and he's only been in the job for 5 seconds, practically. You know, historically speaking, he has nothing to do with this. And if the Labour Party really wants to talk about sentencing, then it must address its own record first.
Yeah.
It does appear to be that Rishi Sunak, a lot of people now think he's not doing too bad a job, and the polls are showing the two parties actually getting closer.
Yeah.
With the election coming up, do you think there is even a tiny chance that Rishi Sunak can turn it around completely and the Conservatives could actually win the next election?
I think there's more than a tiny chance, and the direct historical comparison is with 1992, where you had a Conservative Party in government that was not particularly liked at that point. You would change from Mrs Thatcher to John Major. He had some headway, and you had an opposition leader who was not particularly liked across the country either. So it was sort of better the devil you know, and I think this is exactly the case now. We've changed Prime Minister, we've got sort of a fresh face, there does seem to be some momentum for Mr Sunak, and Sir Keir Starmer has been in the job for quite a while now and just doesn't seem to be getting the personal approval ratings that he would need in order to beat the Conservatives at the next election. Now, of course, weeks long time in politics, so it could be that next week the entire global economy crashes and, Keir Starmer can say, well, look, the Conservatives can't deal with it. But I think on the current tracking of polls, it's entirely likely that you could see a small Conservative majority scrape back.
Yeah, but it's going to be interesting. We've got we're in that period where we need to be careful what we say about the local elections coming up, of course. But I mean, and that's what these campaign ads are based around, the local elections. I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see how. I know they don't always transfer into a general election, but nevertheless, it's going to be interesting.
It'll be interesting because a lot of the places that the Labour Party would hope to win, if they go Labour at the local level, it doesn't really, I think, track to the national level. And anyway, I'm not sure that people are that angry with the Conservatives. They're more, it seems to me, from reading opinion polls and reading political tracking, that they're just a bit fed up generally. I don't think there's a sense of real anger. There isn't the ire that there was in 1996-7, when the Conservatives got an absolute drubbing at the local elections, and then, of course, Mr Blair won his enormous landslide. I don't get the sense that there is that feeling in the country. There's just a general discontent. Now, that could play through to the Labour Party doing well, but would that play through to a general election victory, let's say, spring or autumn next year? I'm not persuaded yet.
OK. David Oldroyd-Bolt, good to see you.